And we're live. Welcome to the Virtual Real Estate Investing Podcast. My name's John Plumstead, and I am here with the one, the only, Frank Scappaticci. How you doing, Frank?
Doing very good. It's also the first podcast that we're doing, so big deal. I'm excited.
Yes. So hopefully the first of many. We've done lots of live videos. We've done lots of planned videos, but we said, hey, let's try a podcast. So with that being said, instead of talking about starting a podcast forever, let's start the podcast. Frank, tell me about Grayline Investments today. What is it?
So today it's a wholesaling and flipping company. I think what differentiates us from other people that do what we do is probably that we do everything virtually. So I live in New York. So do you. You live about 55 minutes north of where I do. I live just north of Manhattan, but all of our deals are in Texas, Georgia, Florida, Ohio for a short period of time, Clarksville, Tennessee. So we're all over the place in the United States. So that differentiates us. And we do flips as well, remotely and scale. I think, what we found in 2020 was it wasn't that hard for us, I think, to do like 2 to 4 deals a month. We were kind of in that space for, I'd say, the spring. But I think what makes us different is the aggressiveness in which we scaled the company to getting a lot of leads in, doing a lot of deals. So that's us in a nutshell. Remote,
Excellent.
A lot of volume.
Virtual real estate investing, as the title of the podcast is. I think you'll see we live up to it, and we try our best to help others be the best they can be at virtual real estate investing. So as you think about Grayline Investments today, what does a company look like? How's it structured, Frank?
Yeah, it's awesome. So as you're fully aware, me and you are the partners. So we're the owners of the company. We have 2 awesome stateside employees, Adam Parsons, who's our acquisitions manager, and Carlos San Diego, who manages contract to close, aka dispositions for other companies that may call it that. And we've started to get more vertical underneath them. So on the acquisition side, acquisition is the lifeline of any wholesaling business or flipping company, really. Need good deals. So we've staffed up there first, I would say, and more heavily. And we have an awesome team of lead specialists and lead associates. I'm not going to go through all the names because it'll take me a long time because we have such a big team, but we essentially have a team of cold callers, texters, and team members doing ringless voicemails. And in between them and Adam, we've elevated Diane, who essentially is screening some of the leads that the lead specialists are getting and making sure that Adam is getting really good, really qualified leads that he can close when he comes into the office every single day. And then on the disposition side and contract to close, we have Carlo, supported by Kia, who just messaged us and is doing all the outbound marketing. So messaging out to the cash buyers list, managing, putting the listings together. And also Joycey, who kind of doubles as we have one dual-hatted, I would say, like very much dual-hatted lead specialist. And Joycey does some ops stuff. She helps manage the title company, make sure that the walkthroughs are executed properly, and she also helps out on lead generation. So almost everyone in our lead specialist groups have a designated role, with the exception of Joycey, who has like 3 different hats that she wears.
Gotcha. And what does deal flow, deal volume look like these days, Frank?
Now coming into 2021, it was a little light with the holidays. I think last week we had just around 20 qualified leads. But at the same time, we're kind of batting a really high average in terms of how many of those leads Adam is closing, which is like the numbers have changed a little bit from the previous quarter. So when I'm answering the question, I'm like, I got to give you the answer for now. And because this is a short sample, I got to give you the answer for the past, right? So right now, it's kind of like we're getting 20 because we had 20 leads, and we're converting like half of, like, not half, but 1 out of every 10. So like that's turning into like 2 contracts. But today we have 2 contracts signed just right now, just in this morning. So that's going really well. But I'd say historically, when our SMS rates are back to normal and we're not in the holiday period, we were bringing in right around 30 to 35 leads per week. And that would generally result in 2 to 3 contracts. And that was kind of the norm for us in Q3 and previous to the holidays, but I think where we want to go is to have a deal coming in almost every single day. So still a ways to go, but we're definitely getting qualified leads every week.
Excellent. And I should go on to say, I'm asking Frank these questions. We're partners, so I could potentially be answering these questions, which would be awkward. And it is kind of awkward for me to just be asking Frank these questions. But we think it'll roll a little bit better. I do the question asking, and then Frank answers. Then maybe we'll switch seats in another podcast. But let's go to the origin story, Frank. Right. So if that is where we are today, how to get started.
Yeah, it was started by you, me, and our buddy Justin, who was with the company for most of 2020. And I can't remember who was the first person to shoot out the text, but one of us was like, hey, COVID's here. We got plenty of time in our schedule with no one commuting and all this uncertainty. Let's try to make the best of it. We all own real estate. Let's pool our resources together, add our hustle together, and let's buy some single family assets. Like, so it was kind of like the preliminary BRRRR strategy, right? Like, we're like, hey, let's just pull money together and we'll do some BRRRRs, right? And our goal, I think at the time was, let's do 10 deals prior to October, I think it was. So we had from February to October to do 10 deals. I think we tried for like 2 weeks to go through agents and do things the old fashioned way. And we had no success. And we very quickly said, hey, let's just use the techniques wholesalers use. Let's use SMS. We started with SMS marketing as our primary means to lock up deals. We did that, and we batted an insanely high average. I think we only had like 2,000 contacts. And I think we got like 3 deals out of that, which is good. It was pretty solid. And it was in like Lawton and Killeen. So one of the cities was really small. So we got a little lucky. We locked up 3 deals. And then I think on the 4th deal, we were like, all right, we didn't know how to raise private money yet. So naturally we said, let's start wholesaling. Then that was it. That's kind of how we were born. Then after we did 4 turned into 7. And then the next month we did a couple more. And then we were like, let's hire people, So I think right around, that took about 60 days, that entire cycle I just talked about. So it happened fast. And I think at that like 60-day mark, we said, it's time to scale the company. This is actually a real thing. So. Excellent.
And so those first 2 months, it was, when was the first month? We'll call it like March 2020. So March and April of 2020, things start firing off. And what was it that gave you the confidence to say, let's double down?
Probably when like 50 grand came into the business banking account after those first couple deals. I mean, that's the thing that's so addicting about wholesaling in general. At the very beginning, there's like no overhead. And you're also not fully aware of the challenges of scaling this business, because it's not easy to scale. I do believe there are easier companies to scale than a wholesaling company. But it is very easy to get the money at the beginning, in my opinion. So the confidence was probably the money, coupled with the fact that I didn't really enjoy my primary job. So I was like, any awesome opportunity to work with my friends and, replace my income, like, was going to be incentivized. I was going to feel good about that. And because we had dumb luck, we probably didn't know any better, to be honest. I was like, oh, I could do 50 grand. Must be easy to make $1 million, and then you learn there's a lot more to it than what we were doing over time.
So what did we do with that first 50K? I think we reinvested it, but do you remember how we kind of allocated it?
Yeah. I'd say more than half of that 50K went towards education between the sales training. We did John Martinez sales training, Dan Schwartz's 80/20 Investor Academy, I think was one of the first purchases we made. And that's really all about scale. That education program, which is perfect timing for where we were, because we were hustling our butts off, doing all the outbound marketing ourselves, managing all the transactions ourselves, dispoing everything ourselves. So meeting Dan was really good at that point in time. And then the remainder we spent on bringing in people, right? So we wanted to make sure we had some reserves so that when we brought in Adam and Carlo, we could pay them at the end of the month, and we had some liquidity. So education, reserves for employees, and liquidity was really where all that money went. So.
Gotcha. And as as we started bringing people in, what was the pitch to grow the team? How did we get team members on board, do you think?
I think you had because you reached out to Adam and Carlo first. So you might be the better answerer or provider of that answer. But I think a big selling point was we think we have a process that we can scale. And we were just so excited. like we were so pumped to be able to do this. I feel like there's this trust that we're good people. I think we have good ethics. We all get along. And I think part of the draw is probably like, okay, there's no guarantee this works, but it's got a fair shot. And this is a good group of people. So that's better than most companies. Let's give it a go. You know, there was definitely some ready, fire, aim to what we did, but I don't know. That doesn't mean it was bad either. I think it was awesome, to be honest.
For sure. And then you talked about kind of how we had a little luck in the beginning. When was the first time you were like, this is hard?
Yeah, I think, our spending got a little high, I'd say, in the summer. When you start to convert a disproportionate or unrealistic number of leads in your first 60 to 90 days, there's a tendency to, let's just spend more on marketing, right? Let's spend more on this. You know, every dollar we put into marketing, we get $4 back. Just keep going, right? So we started spending a lot on text, a lot with Facebook, PPC, and it probably would have been prudent to just get really, really good at outbound, right, at that point in time. But we felt like we needed to try PPC and all that stuff. So I think that's when it became hard, because there was a month when we made a good amount of money. And then you looked at, the top line and the bottom line, and you're like, all right, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? So that's when I was like, this is when scale becomes difficult, right? It's because you can't just look at dump more and more money into marketing, hire more people. Like the machine it takes a little bit of time to grow. It doesn't grow overnight. And we were so eager out the gate. I think that it's possible we maybe wasted $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. But, so that's when I realized it was hard. Also, like hiring and trying not to step on people's toes because you used to do that job. I mean, that's hard too, but luckily we got an awesome team. So I think at this point we're pretty much comfortable, handing the keys over when it's appropriate.
Nice. So if you had to sum up, then, it's January 2021 right now. Sum up kind of March 2020 until today. Like, how would you section off those different, time periods for our business?
Yeah. So, all right. This is the life cycle, in my opinion, of a really eager off-market wholesaler, off-market dealer. So you start out, you have limited funds that you're willing to dedicate, and you start hustling your butt off, right? And at this phase, it might take you 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. Eventually, you'll lock up a deal and feel some success. Luckily for us, happened fast. But you're kind of like just grinding and like sticking with it. And there's just a level of perseverance required. That's kind of like puberty, right? If I'm like thinking of the life cycle of a human. Then if you succeed, which we did initially, we became teenagers. Really aggressive, hyper aggressive, slightly arrogant, don't know everything, don't listen to the elder statesmen out there. And then inevitably you get rocked down to earth to a certain extent. Although like we've been profitable, I think there was like a little bit of like a smack across our head in Q3 and Q4, like you don't know everything. And then I think where we're at now is I think we're probably around the same age as we are as a business. Like we're like 30 years old. We kind of know what we're doing. Our relationships are getting stronger, but we know that there's a long way to go. Like we're not halfway there yet, So that's I got kind of like crazy with the analogy there, but that's kind of how I see us right now.
Gotcha. And let's dig in a little bit to the climb, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you think of some of those periods where we got knocked down, right? Like how were you able to remain confident and then start climbing back up?
I think when you feel like things are not going the way you want or chips are down, I think that's the benefit of not being a solopreneur. You need, like, it's good to have a partner because doing this alone can be psychologically tough. I think any business, that's the case, especially if you have two sales orgs in your organization. Sales is inherently hard, if everyone's selling all the time and morale goes down, the business won't last, right? So I think if you're a solopreneur doing this and you ever feel down, just know that a partner might be partly the solution, depending on your personality, right? As long as it's a good partner. But that's one thing. I think having you there, having Adam and Carlo there is really, really helpful. And two, for me personally, routine is what helps keep me together. Like when I have 2 hours to think within a day and I wake up early and I give myself time to like relax, and have some like self-discipline in my day, I do really well. I'm super resilient. There was a period after my second daughter was born where my routine got thrown out the window because I was not sleeping. And like those times were tough, you know? And then as I've gotten more sleep over the last 2 months, I find myself gravitating towards my previous routine, and it's just good for morale. So I think having partnerships, friends in your business that you can trust, or maybe not your friends, but people you can trust, and your own personal self-discipline like that. You know, now I think like if I had to start this company over in a cardboard box, like I would do it, you know, but it takes a while to get there psychologically.
I like it. If you look back at our first, 10 months in business, we've been in business for 10 months, right? What are you most proud of, or what are a few things that you're really proud of that we've accomplished?
I think I think I like a couple of things. One, I think our culture is really good for a young, small company. Sounds cliche, but I really do mean that. So our core values are character, hustle, grit, and that's how we evaluate the members of our team. And I think the team we've landed on, because we have had significant turnover in our company over the last 10 months or 11 months. I think our 11th anniversary just passed. Is really, really good. Some people say that you want your company to feel like a cult, and I wouldn't go that far with describing our company, but I do think that there is this like shared belief system across our core team members that's really, really strong. So that's big. The second thing is like, I mean, we were able to maintain profitability while going through all these lessons, and we did not stop playing offense. I have this belief that if you're an entrepreneur, if you have the opportunity to play offense, you should play it as much as you can. And this is what I mean by that. Going on a sales call to partner with another wholesaler, or going on a sales call to talk to an institutional buyer, that's offense, right? Like you're on the hunt. You're looking for ways to increase the revenue in your business. It's good for the soul. This is good for it too. Like going on a podcast, doing marketing, it's good for the soul, right? And I think we've done a good job of focusing on those things. For me, going into QuickBooks and analyzing our taxes and categorizing stuff, that's defense for me, right? But we found a good CPA, Larry Dixon, that's his offense, right? So like my thought is I want everyone in my ecosystem playing offense as much as possible all the time, you know? And I was telling my wife that too, like personally, like want to book a trip, book the trip, you know? Like I don't care about COVID. I mean, I do. We'll take the precautions when we get there, but like let's not let us get in the way, you know?
Yeah, I like that. As they say in the podcast world, I'd like to unpack that a little bit, right?
Right.
So let's talk about culture, right? I think some people may have a visceral reaction to the idea that we are 11 months old talking about culture, right? Like, yeah, you guys are still babies. Don't talk to me about culture. So why is it that you do think we have a strong culture, and you would refute that?
Well, one is we have enough touch points where I think we can see our teammates, but two, I think in wholesaling in particular, I think bad character will get exposed extremely quickly, because there's opportunities to act with bad ethics almost at every single point within a transaction, right? Are you being transparent with sellers on what the process looks like? Are they aware that you're going to have walkthroughs and people are going to look at the house, right? Are they aware that you're taking a fee and you're making money as an investor? People try to hide the sausage on the front end. Eventually it comes exposed, right? You get closer to the closing table, seller has a complaint. Wait, this isn't what you told me you were doing, right? And that's because you didn't have the fortitude to tell them exactly how it's going to go or set expectations at the beginning. Furthermore, on the buying end, I've tried the JV deals with people, other wholesalers, and they'll show their cards like on their ethics, like right there, right? Like they'll try to not be honest with how much their fee is and all this other stuff. What I'm getting is this: in our business and wholesaling and flipping, we're all grabbing equity, right? A home has a value, and we're all trying to get a fair amount for our work, right? Of the equity in that house throughout the transaction. You get too greedy, you stop providing value, or you're dishonest with people, like it will eventually bubble up. But the owner will find out. If Carlo was driving prices up by saying, "Oh, I got another offer higher than yours. Can you give me an extra $3,000?" If Carlo did that in perpetuity, we would eventually find out he was improperly bidding up our buyers, right? And they would find out too. So if you don't have good character, especially in this business, because the cash can move pretty quickly, it'll show itself. So I'm very confident we don't have that issue.
Nice. And then we don't, but now we've got a company with double-digit personnel spread out literally across the globe, right? Our lead specialists, our virtual assistants are located in other countries. Do they embody our culture? Do they embody our values? And if so, how?
I think they do. We just had Kia come on your session yesterday and go live. And I think if you listen to her speak and you said, hey, their company values are character, hustle, grit, and you watch Kia talk, you'd be like, yeah, like she's a believer. And I think that I watched it obviously, and I thought that was really, really apparent. Especially Joycey and Diane, who've been with us for over 6 months. Those are our 3 initial virtual assistant hires. We don't call them VAs in our business. We call them lead specialists and associates for those watching. I don't know. It's how do you personify character, hustle, grit? We say characters do the right thing, treat people with respect, which I've always seen them do. Extremely supportive. Like we know when Diane got married, like the other virtual assistants are involved. They're congratulating her. Like there's a little bit of like a boost there. But then on the hustle and grit side, like they're doing outbound marketing every single day, and they're delivering leads every single day. Doing that for 40 hours a week is the definition of hustle, right? And grit to do it over 2 quarters. That's not easy work, right? But to come in, do that work, deliver on your job, and then show up to your 2 meetings a week with John and Frank with a smile on your face and like trying to add value in other areas of the business, like, I don't need to be convinced that they have it. If you start seeing those behaviors, like they're executing the daily hustle, and then they're like giving recommendations to the boss, the owner of the company, like, dude, that's a winner. I
like it. Let's talk about turnover a little bit, right? And we don't have to get into it too deep, but I think if you would have told me 11 months ago that we were going to turn over as many people as we have, I would have said, no way, right?
Yeah.
Because if we have a good culture, shouldn't it keep people here, right? So can you talk a little bit about turnover and how we've determined what is a good fit and what isn't a good fit?
Yeah. I think you start with grading people on your company values. From just an HR personnel management perspective, I think Traction, the book, does a great job describing this, right? So when you're either going to decide to move on from someone, if you decide you have the wrong person or you have the right person in the wrong seat, and that seat in your business doesn't exist, right? Those are probably the 2 reasons you get rid of someone. The wrong fit means they don't align with your values, which we've had, right? And sometimes you can interview for that, and sometimes you just don't find out, right? The only thing I could say about that is when you do find out that the person's just not going to be a fit in your organization, especially if you're a small company, you should be decisive, right? So what we tell people when they join our company is we typically have a 30-day trial period to make sure this is a fit for both parties. We appreciate this is a young company. If they don't like us, we don't want them to be stuck with us either, right? We're so young. We're not Google, right? We don't offer the same type of benefits package they do. So if they want to leave, like that's actually very fair. So offering a trial period is one way that we manage that as a small company. And then like right person, wrong seat. Like to me, that's just a future business partner. But to answer your question on turnover, that's how I look at it. do they align to our company values? If not, wrong person. If they are the right person, do we have the right seat? If they're a great salesperson, but we need a transaction coordinator, that's probably a future business partner, and eventually after 30 days, you should probably be able to figure out what makes that person tick.
Gotcha. What about one of the strategies we've tried, sometimes successfully and sometimes unsuccessfully, is creating the seats in our business based on the team we had, not creating the seats based on the business that we had. So what are your thoughts on making sure that we have the right positions and the right structure for success today and then success long-term? How do you think about that?
Well, I think that you got to be a little careful. I know we have thoughts about what the future of the company can look like and what roles there might be in there. Like, we want to start an education arm of our business. We have a mastermind. We eventually want to scale it to have a higher margin, higher end course where we add a lot of value for lead generation, people trying to generate leads because we're good at it. And you could argue that, like, hey, that'll require role A, like a different role for the company, and like maybe that's in the back of our heads, but like, let's hustle that and then we'll scale. I don't like it when people try to scale things that haven't been hustled at all, right? Like, right now, the most important thing in our company is the people in it right now. And I really believe we have people in the right seats, right? And then as business owners, we'll do some business development for the new revenue streams, and then we'll kind of scale underneath that, right? That effort. So like, how much time am I thinking about, who's the primary person to lead this, other initiative? And honestly, that's me and you, while managing the current team, which we think is the right team. And then once we get a little bit of revenue in that door, we'll scale it appropriately. So I'm not spending, honestly, a ton of time thinking about that next person.
Gotcha. Profitability, money flow, making sure that we're liquid, right? Liquidity. What lessons have we learned about profitability, revenue, expenses, bookkeeping, QuickBooks, CPA? I could go on and on, right? Like, we've learned a lot, but what are some of the big things that stand out to you?
Liquidity, I'll touch that first. You never can have enough cash in your bank account. A couple of reasons. One, in wholesaling and off-market dealing, marketing channels will fluctuate with their effectiveness, right? 2 years ago, if you got on the PPC, Google ads, Facebook ads, YouTube ads train, the cost was much lower to get a lead than it is now, right? So that's changed a lot. We use SMS as a primary marketing platform in our company. Delivery rates on carriers, or to certain carriers, or just on the vendor you're using itself, are very prone to fluctuation. If that fluctuation works against you, your leads could go from 50 or 100 per month to 20, right? You could get legitimately a 50% or more reduction depending on how your channels are operating or working. So let's say you make $0 that month. Let's say you're in a crash course because you made $0. Like, how many months can you survive? And now my mindset is we need 3 months of operating expenses covered in the bank account. And then we could talk about quarterly bonuses and special projects and all this other stuff. Because once you have employees, you have a responsibility to, if you have to weather a storm, you can weather that storm. And I think in wholesaling, 3 months can do that for you, preferably more if you can. But we, just to give a real example of that, we were sitting pretty cash heavy in August, and we had the opportunity to do our first loan. We're like, yeah, let's. It's not that much money. It was a cheap house, and it was a really good borrower. And we're like, yo, let's lend it out, And then just exactly what I said happened. Some of our marketing platforms took that dip, and we were fine. But there was definitely like a 2-month period where I was like, I really wish we didn't lend out that money, And that's just the stress that you don't want as a business owner, because being lighter on cash, I think, inhibits your decision making. You're less likely to take risk. You're more likely to play defense, which I alluded to before. And I don't think a young company should be playing a lot of defense. I think you should be able to be aggressive.
Yeah, the old cash is king sounds so cliche, but oh my goodness, right? Cash is king. Let's talk about scale some. And one, I think we're we look at scale differently than a lot. The other thing is there's so many people that would say, hey, doing a deal a month is awesome. Doing, 12 deals in a year is awesome. But for some reason, in 2020, we did 50 deals, right? And we're hoping to get to the point where we do a deal a day. So can you talk to me about scale some?
Yeah. And just to make a point, if someone's goal is to do a deal a day, there's nothing wrong with, or excuse me, a deal a month. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're earning a W-2 income and you're making a 10K fee a month on the side, hey, you can live totally fine. You can become very wealthy that way. So that's great. But how I look at scale is, not only obviously you make more money, right? I think like that is like the most immediate motivators. Like our upside is going to be a lot higher, right? But to me, it was also a much more sustainable path, right? When you scale, people that are in the hustle, their roles become more defined, right? As the business owner, gives you opportunity to look for other avenues of approach. So for people like you and me that have the shiny object syndrome, scale is like an inevitable thing. You're either going to do it or you're going to get distracted, right? So, and to be honest, like Carlo and Adam had to replace our hustle for a certain amount of time as we were scaling, right? And they had to Adam was closing the deal. He was cold calling. He was doing everything. And that's too much too, right? So scale is not only a revenue driver, but I think it's a sustainability thing. There's a lot of people that wholesale for 6 months and make 60 grand and still tap out, right? Or a year or 2 years. Because if you're always the one on the phone forever and you have to carry the weight of the CPA, right? Like both sides, both front offices, as things continue to grow, it's just very, very stressful. So I think it's also a sustainability thing. And I'm glad we did it, because if I would have given a different answer 10 months ago, I would have just said more money, more options that you have. But it definitely makes everyone's quality of life go up as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. What do you think makes us different? Like we talked about scale some, but what other things do you think make us different in this marketplace?
I don't know. I think like, I don't want to give the character and like the soft answer because we've covered that already. But although I do think that's a differentiator, us being honest on both sides of our business. But I don't know if we're doing anything super different, right? I think we're hitting the same lists that a lot of people are. We're not the only wholesaler in any of the cities we're in. Like we have competition. We use the 70% minus rehab rule and how we underwrite our houses, which half the wholesalers out there use, right? So we underwrite very similar to people. I think to differentiate yourself in this type of business is you got to be extremely nitpicky and process improvement oriented on all the different components of the business. And it's the hard thing to scale about wholesaling is every single step, like all 50 steps in the process, do have an influence over either your throughput or the margins or the revenue you make per deal, right? Like if you qualify sellers and you say, hey, we're going to be very upfront with you. Are you willing to sell your house at less than the Zillow or the Zestimate, right? You're going to have less qualified leads hit your acquisition manager, but he might bat a higher average, or he or she might bat a higher average. That's one example or one step out of like 75 steps that you kind of need to iterate to scale the business and make more money. So I think what separates us is like we do the same thing everyone else is doing, but we do it harder and with more of a magnifying glass, I think, at least in the 12-month period that we've been doing it. I think there's definitely people that are doing it at a super high level, and we're on that trajectory. But I guess that's grit, right? That's the company value that I'm kind of embodying right now by saying that. But yeah, we're improving everything, like all the time.
How have you been able to wrap your head around that delegation piece? Because we have those 50 different steps we need to have happen to close a deal. And I think that's where a lot of people get bogged down when it comes to scale, is losing control and delegating is really hard for them. So how have we been able to overcome that potentially?
Well, I think in terms of a delegation step, I think I used to think like procedures. We used to have SOPs in our company, and we still do. They're on our drive. But what, at least in our experience, no one reads them, right? So a lot of effort put into there, and I don't know how much value we got. But giving people checklists and objectives for whatever call they have to make or whatever task they have to complete is really powerful. So, for example, when Carlo calls a cash buyer that's interested in the property and maybe they just left a walkthrough, it's like obviously objective number one, build rapport. If you don't know the person, like be a good person. But objective number two is what is the number, right? Like don't let the cash buyer off the phone without saying, even if they don't want to buy it, like, hey, why not? What price would you buy it? You need something, right? So that's his objective, right? Get the number, even if it's not the number you want. And like giving people checklists and objectives is super powerful, and it's way shorter and easier to make than an SOP. And then on the delegation side, I've gotten better about this, but just not trying to be perfect. Like perfection is the enemy of greatness. Like there's things that I've delegated to Carlo and he brings it up and I'm like, damn, I never even thought of that, you know? But like I could get upset about it, but then I also should be thinking, damn, Carlo, I didn't give him that guidance and he still got the deal done, you know? Like that's a good thing. I shouldn't be fretting about that. I should feel good about it. So, and Carlo feels good too. He's like, oh, my idiot boss didn't know that, but now I'm doing it. Like I should be the boss, which maybe you should, but yeah, like just don't let that stuff bother you. And don't try to make your process too perfect.
I like it. I feel like I'm doing the interviewing, and although it's been very informative, maybe I'm asking some boring questions. So I want to go a little bit of a right turn. And okay. I think you'll appreciate this because you love a good crazy story, right?
Sure.
But do you have a crazy story that's happened in 11 months that you'd like to share? I can think of a couple different ones, but do you have one that comes to mind?
Well, which one are you thinking about? You seem more prepared for this than I am.
I don't know if I'm more prepared. You might be a better storyteller. I'm thinking the initial one, Justin dealt with the property manager that clearly was constantly under the influence and was trying to like shake us down for $20 a pop to do showings and stuff.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So no, I actually ended up having to speak to him too. This property man, this poor seller, man, this actually makes me sad. So we were under contract for a house in Copper's Cove, Texas. And I think we were under contract for like 120 and the ARV was like 210 or something. And the seller was like, hey, it doesn't need that much work. Like maybe 5-10 grand worth of work. It was a nice house. And we're like, okay, cool. Let's lock it up at this price, but we'll do a walkthrough to verify the condition. And the property manager has to let us in. Now, this property manager definitely hasn't been in this house in 10 years. Like definitely was not checking up on the house or managing anything besides transferring funds to the owner. And this house was wrecked. Like the tenants stole the sink out of the walls and all the bathroom. It smelled bad. Dogs had ripped up. It was really, really bad. And there was foundation issues that the owner was never alerted to. So like it was a 10K rehab that was really a 60 grand plus rehab. It was a lot. And this property manager obviously gets yelled at by the owner because he's cost this owner a lot of money. We have to renegotiate the offer because we couldn't buy the house at that price anymore. But we still were the best option for that seller. And then the property manager had the gall to be like, hey, if you want to have anyone, contractors, buyers, look at this property, like you got to throw me like $200 per walkthrough. And I was like, and we were brand new. And I was like, man, like this is like one of the 2 deals we have in the pipeline because we had no deal flow at that point or very limited. And I agreed, I couldn't understand him. He was a ridiculous guy, but then he never collected the money. I think he ran up a tab of like $600 to like let us in the house. And then he texted me like, hey, are you going to send the money? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll send it over. I've never heard from him again. So yeah, that was my sketchy property management story. He was rough.
Nice. You should also tell the story without saying the address because there's so many dangerous angles to this. But the story of how with the same house, we kind of had to deal with the drug cartel and very shady other wholesalers. Do you remember the spaghetti tangle?
Oh my God. Yeah. It's probably the worst. I had to get involved heavily in this one. So we had a home, and we're under contract for a long time. There was multiple people on the deed, like I think 2 ex-husbands and obviously the wife. And it took us a month to get the first husband. Then we focused on the second one. The second husband was out of the country. He was basically extradited, I guess, to Mexico he was in the cartel, drug charges and everything. And they couldn't get in touch with him, didn't know where he was. We only had the lawyer's contact info, and they couldn't get in touch with the owner. We finally, this takes 2 months. We finally get the signature because we were like, listen, if we don't get it this month or this week, we're gonna cancel the contract. Can't do this anymore. It was ridiculous. We are 2 days before closing. After getting all this work done, title company worked their butts off on this, and it's like crickets. Can't find the seller. Right, the final signature, the person who's actually working with us the whole time. We eventually find out through the grapevine that another wholesaler locked up the property while all this was going on at with more earnest money, but like the same price. And I called the other wholesaler, and I was like, "Hey, let's just make this work, man. I don't want to do this anymore. I'll let you into my fee for a little bit, or let's split the fee. Whoever's got the bigger one, and let's do that." And we had the senior contract, but I just didn't want to deal with this anymore, you know. And we wanted to keep our buyer at their price. That was the deal. And the guy completely reneged on the deal at the last minute, and essentially like coerced the deal out of our hands. We would have had to sue the seller for performance, which we didn't really want to do because for other reasons. And I found out later, actually this week, that they also screwed our buyer when we terminated the contract. So he said he was going to honor that original contract, and I found out he did not. So I'm actually a little butthurt about that one. That was not cool.
Gotcha. A few more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. One is, at least from the outside looking in, you had a potentially cush job in New York, in Manhattan. I would imagine it paid you a nice salary. You probably could have ridden that to the end of time and continued to do real estate as a side hustle. But you made the decision to quit your job and do this full time. Can you talk about why you did that, how you did that, what it felt like to do that? I imagine there's a lot of people listening that are hoping to grow real estate to a point where they can quit their job. And I'd love you to explain some of that.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons. I think I definitely didn't feel like I was personally growing as much as I wanted to be in my full-time job. I don't know. I just, there's like a level of like being out on the edge that like in front of your company and like being the number one cheerleader for your company and being an entrepreneur that I think is always like gnawing at me in the back of my head. Like, man, like if I could just go on my own and do this, like it would be more fulfilling. And then like, I just had a boss that I just thought she was not great. You know, like I had a typical guy, didn't like my boss at all. I thought she was, to be blunt, low character. Right. And that eventually weighs on you. So I was like, well, if on this trajectory, I'm either going to go find another W-2 job in the financial services industry, or I'm going to do my own thing. Right. And that was already in my head. Then when we had the conversation, hey, let's side hustle. And then it turned into something kind of real. I started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And then when we started forming a culture and like having like our internal policies, and it started to like work and proliferate, that was just more encouraging. Then after, I'd say about 4 or 5 months, I decided like as long as this thing doesn't explode and this thing keeps working, I don't want to risk what we built because I'm distracted with something I don't like, even if I'm going to lose some money in the first couple of months of not being employed by that W-2 job, right? Like I haven't fully replaced my income. I had a good income, right? But I believe we will. And like, I don't want to, as our old coach in football would say, don't sacrifice the steak for the hot dog. You know, my old job was the hot dog. I'm like, this is the steak, you know? So that's how I look at it.
Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up, Frank. Do you have any final words for the inaugural, the first ever virtual real estate investing podcast brought to you by Greyline Investments? Any final words?
No, man. I think if anyone's listening, I hope they heard my story and feel encouraged, because our story, I think, is a very real, option for anyone that has a W-2 job or has a little bit of time on their hands, that it can be done, right? You can scale in 10 months. It's possible, but it's not easy. So any guru that's telling you they can outsource the marketing for you and get it all done, blah, 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 everything can be done PPC, limited hustle, it's not true, right? I think this is very much a business that's there's a lot of shortcuts being sold out there, but if you really want to do it the right way, you got to build a strong foundation and hustle your butt off. But it's doable.
I like it. We've often talked about how maybe we were allured into real estate thinking that we could make riches faster than you could in other areas, and maybe you can. But the bottom line is we work really hard. We get punched in the face constantly, and we're having success. And I love real estate, but I think the tenacity it takes to be successful is a lot greater than most people would lead on. And the amount of failures we have too, right? Like we did 50 deals last year, but we tried to do 100 deals and 50 of them fell through, some of them in very emotional ways. But
we said in Q4 we're going to do, or Q3, a deal a day, every day. We didn't hit that goal. We were in the teenage years, right? We thought we knew everything. Didn't happen, but we're still trying to get there.
Excellent. All right. Great final words. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. The first virtual real estate investing podcast is now in the books. Thank you for